Introducing our video presentation in National Electrical Manufacturers Association.
Hello, good evening, everyone. We are Group 7 and we will discuss National Electric Manufacturers Association or NEMA. So, what is NEMA all about? So, the National Electrical Manufacturers Association or NEMA is the largest trades association of electrical equipment manufacturers in the United States. Founded in 1926, it advocates for the industry and publishes standards for electrical products. Notably, the form of U.S. household electrical outlets and plugs is specified by NEMA. It was founded in 1926 and maintains its headquarters in Roslyn, Virginia, in the Washington metropolitan area. Its approximately 350 member companies manufacture products used in the generation, transmission, distribution, control, and end use of electricity. These products are used in utility, industrial, commercial, institutional, and residential applications. The association's Medical Imaging and Technology Alliance, or MITA, division represents manufacturers of cutting-edge medical diagnostic imaging equipment including MRI, CT, X-ray, and ultrasound products. Other major end markets include building systems, electrical infrastructure, industrial systems, lighting systems, and utility systems. So, in short, the National Electrical Manufacturer Association uh, creates the standardization of all the product or electric products rather that uses in the United States and other countries. It states that the NEMA is the one responsible of um, creating the standard for the particular equipment so that it limits the substandard products that may cause harm to the household and other um, industrial or medical infrastructures. So let's talk about NEMA standards. I will discuss two. So first things first is the NEMA standards publication BS 3 30,000-2021, or also known as lithium-ion battery first guidance document. Introduction. This document has been developed based on one prepared by the FIA Li-ion battery SIG, which compromises FIA members and other interested parties and organizations. The SIG is open to FIA members and others with an interest in increasing the understanding of the issue of lithium-ion battery fires and protecting people and property from consequences of these fires. This document represents the current understanding of the industry and will update it as more information becomes available. The scope of this discussion is this guidance paper provides information on these issues related to letter A, the use of lithium-ion batteries, letter B, how fires start in batteries, and letter C, how fires may be detected, controlled, suppressed, or extinguished. It also provides guidance on post-fire management. Excluded from the scope are explosions and ventilation issues. So in this topic, we will all discuss the lithium-ion battery. We are all familiar with this one because um, in this current scenario, we are using lithium batteries almost everywhere. Like for example, the mga portable na ano power banks, yan. Tapos yung mga e-car natin na nilalabas sa market, one major component nun is yung lithium battery itself mismo. Dun siya, din yung nagpapagana ng kotse itself. So, battery types. Lithium-ion batteries vary widely and continue to evolve in terms of their materials of construction, chemistry, and configuration. Lithium bat- lit- excuse me. Lithium-ion batteries are rechargeable as opposed to lithium batteries which are not, and all contains lithium ions in a flammable electrolyte. They are not contain any free lithium metal. Cell, cell, en- um, Cell enclosures may typically be metal or polymer and configure as cylinders or jelly roll, pouch or polymers or prismatic. Cathodes are an oxide-coated lithium, such as lithium cobalt oxide with an anode, such as graphite in an electrolyte with a polyfilm or polyfilm separator. The batteries vary in size and configuration depending on their use and application. Larger batteries may be found in energy storage systems and vehicles, while smaller batteries are used in laptops and mobile phones, with lots of intermediate applications. Batteries are arranged in series to increase voltage and in parallel to increase capacity. So yun na nga, majority of our mobile phones and yun na nga, power banks, yung mga portable fans, all of that composed of lithium-ion batteries. Okay. So let's talk about the fire issues of lithium-ion batteries. As lithium-ion batteries do not contain any free lithium metals, they should be they should not be regarded as a metal fire threat. Waste fire can start, letter A, internal manufacturing defects, of course. Letter B, physical damage. Letter C, electrical abuse. Letter D, thermal abuse. So, yun po. Common issues dito is this stated here. Lalo-lalo na dun sa electrical abuse. Yan. Kasi kadalasan na mamalikmata tayo, minsan yung phone natin overcharged or charged siya buong magdamag. And possible kasi pag compressed yung device, umiinit siya while charging. Okay? Kaya yung iba nating nakikitang sa mga news, possible yun kasi yung lithium ion is very reactive po talaga siya. So cell failure results in a voltage drop and increasing heat release and signals the start of thermal runaway. This typically develops through the following events: temperature increase, venting or gassing off of flammable or toxic electrolyte vapors, flare, steady burn, flash fireball, or explosion. Yun. Letter A, commonly, temperature increase. Yun nga po yung sinasabi ko. Once na yung device is compressed or nandun siya sa part na hindi siya totally stable or hindi siya akma dun sa klima ng device, possible na magkaroon siya ng failure o dun mag-trigger yung kanyang yung increase ng temperature niya. And yun nga, possible na mag-explode yung device. So these are the fire solution. Considered po ito. Letter A, the protection. Letter B, the detection. And letter C, suppression and extinguishing. It describes how the various options function and where data is available, provides example of where the solution has been used on a lithium-ion battery farm. So let's proceed to letter A, the fire solution, letter A, protection. So composed of A.1, containment. One method of handling fires in lithium-ion batteries is to contain the battery and fire to prevent it from spreading to other cells or materials. This can be a solution for small portable battery-powered device. As the size of the battery increases, selecting the methods of containment become more complicated. For example, when looking at vehicle systems, containment will add weight to the vehicle, which might not be the best solution. However, protecting the battery pack from mechanical damage is being used as a compromise. So in here, sinasabi dito na yung once na yung device nga is mas maliit and mas malaki, it depends the variation of the lithium ion. So if the containment or the lalagyanan niya is maliit or malaki, it varies po doon sa kanyang size. Letter B. So next up is the gas detection. Off-gassing occurs early in cell or battery failure. Some battery cells provide vents specially intended to release the overpressure that may develop within individual cells as a result of abuse or failure. Others may expand to accommodate the degree of off-gassing, but at some point, this may burst, perhaps along a seam or pre-designed weak point. So ito yung sinasabi ko kanina, once na may pressure na mag-trigger doon sa device, may cause an explosion or yung mag-leak yung laman ng lithium-ion battery. So off-gassing occurs early in cell. So mali ito. So third step is the suppression and extinguishing. So gaseous fire extinguishing systems. A gaseous system comprises of one or more containers of an extinguishing agent. When the system is operated, it discharges the agent into an enclosure through one or more discharge nozzles. Systems may be activated manually or automatically through a connection to an opposite or appropriate fire detection system. Condensed aerosol systems. Condensed aerosol systems use similar control and monitoring equipment as gaseous fire extinguishing systems. They also flood the room with a fire suppression agent. Unlike gaseous fire extinguishing systems, condensed aerosol systems consist of a solid black compound stored in a non-pressurized container or generator. So number 3, water mist systems. The water mist systems use small water droplets to provide flame cooling and steam smothering of fires. The design's basis is always determined by full-scale fire testing. Therefore, water mist should be only one of the protection of lithium-ion batteries where there is an established test protocol. So, these three here, ito yung mga techniques or yung mga ways to extinguish a um, lithium-ion case na scenario na if there is a um, cause fire, tapos kung may mga leaks, ito po yung systems. Other that, meron pa po sprinkler systems, automatic fire sprinkler systems consist of special nozzles held closed by heat-sensitive flammable elements mounted in steel pipework at ceiling or roof level and connected to a dedicated water supply via control valves. The heat from a fire causes one or more sprinklers to open to discharge water onto the seat of the fire and adjacent combustibles. The amount of water and the number of sprinklers expected to open will increase as the fire load density increases. And next is the energy storage system. The system is envisaged to control the growth and spread of fire. It is not being claimed to be able to suppress or extinguish a fire in energy storage systems. Sprinklers rely on a buildup of heat at ceiling or roof level to activate the sprinkler heads. The speed of response depends upon the size or heat output of the fire and, and the height of the heads above the fire. Sprinklers should be considered as providing fire suppressions rather than extinguishment. Next up is the water deluge system or water deluge. Deluge system, unlike sprinklers, use open nozzles so that when actuated, water discharges from all nozzles in the systems. Deluge is used primarily as a mean of cooling surfaces exposed to fire. When activated by fire detection systems, they can come into operation more rapidly and provide more comprehensively coverage than sprinklers. Next up is the foam systems. Foam systems use foam additives proportioned into a water stream. Foams are generally formulated for use for blanketing and smothering flammable liquid fires. Testing on battery fires has not been published to date. Wetting agents. There, there is there is a range of wetting agents available, but there is a key differences between these because of their manufacture or their end use. Unlike foams, which have a common derivation, accordingly, they have a wide range of abilities and benefits. Wetting agents do not all achieve suppression by reducing the material temperature alone. As a result, judgments on the efficacy of wetting agents in this area are more complex in that the primarily wetting agents' ability to suppress a high temperature threats through its penetration and spreading benefits has to be allied to other benefits to suppress fire incidents and thereby meet the operational need. So, yun. Ito yung mga extinguishing systems na-describe ko. This is, commonly used dito yung sa mga buildings is yung sprinkler system, of course. So, next up is the Nema USG 111-2021 or commonly used for purchasing specification guidance for circuit breaker control cabinets. So itong mga guidelines na to, ito yung mga standards based by the Nema. And ito yung mga parang suggested items to be considered once we build a home or the electrician itself will recommend us. Syempre, to reduce the mga faulty equipments na iniiwasan natin para hindi tayo mag-trigger ng mga fire. So, introduction to circuit breaker control cabinets. The purpose of this document is to provide guidance for product users to assist with developing purchasing specifications and other materials for indoor and outdoor circuit breakers rated 1,000 volts or greater. NEMA members manufacturers of these products have identified below several categories of component requirements within purchase specifications pertaining to the control cabinets that vary widely from customer to customer and are likely to result in increased cost and or slower delivery time while yielding little or no benefits for performance or safety. Included below are the descriptions of each of these with corresponding recommendations. So ito yung sinasabi ko, i-discuss ko kanina na yung NEMA is setting their standards for us to maiwasan yung substandard products. So, cabinet construction. To facilitate access to the cabinet, any door or panel that is 50 pounds or more should have hinges or lifting. Means suitable for 2 people. NEMA recommends specifying desired performance rather than a specific hinge type in order to accommodate advances in design and technologies and to avoid limiting the selection of qualified suppliers. In the case of hinge type designs, NEMA also recommends the inclusion of a doorstop to facilitate operations and enhance worker safety. So next up is wiring internal and external. NEMA recommends several practices for utility customers in developing the portion of their purchasing specifications that impact the wires and cables used to electrically connect devices to corresponding controls in the control cabinets for both power and or communication. Unless noted otherwise, these recommendations apply to internal and external wiring. Some devices, such as current transformers, are often located on the buildings or bushings. When such devices are present in high voltage circuit breakers, we recommend that the customer specifications require only one conduit from each bushing be routed to the control cabinet to keep the wiring separated and clearly identifiable. For medium voltage breakers, current transformers are typically installed with the enclosures, so individual conduits are not necessary. So, dinidiscuss dito yung parang in practice or recommendation ng NEMA if we are conducting a construction or building wiring. Specified here yung sa high dito sa mga sa high-rise buildings, I think high-rise building. Dito in-specify niyo yung high voltage circuit breakers. Ito yung mga high-rise building. For more, itong medium voltage breakers, ito yung mga current mga common household na mga residential. Ito yung mga dinidiscuss ng NEMA. And ito yung mga recommendation ng NEMA. So that we are fully protected and ito yung talagang standard ng NEMA and the direction nila. So receptacles. Only two types of receptacles should be incorporated into control cabinet designs. GFCIs and gas cart receptacles. GFCI receptacles should be rated to 20 amps, sufficient to handle current draws of any connected device on the breaker itself, while gas carts vary in amperage requirements. NEMA recommends installing GFCI receptacles in the control cabinet on the bottom of the panel to make them easily accessible at least 20 inches away from any of the moving parts that link to the interrupting or braking mechanism. So, common options. Manufacturers regularly see customers' orders requiring certain components that exceeds bare minimum code requirements, such as the National Electric Safety Code or any other standard. One such example is an annunciator to provide visual notification of an event while simultaneously sending a signal to a control station. Customer specifications for control cabinet configurations should either prioritize visual access to the annunciator by way of the cabinet window or by the external placement of the annunciator. It is also a best practice to specify a window large enough to view all internal components that require visual access. At a minimum, this would be include open or close and charge or discharge mechanism. So dito sa common option, parang if familiar po kayo sa ATS or sa automatic transfer switch, sa mga high-rise building po kasi di ba, commonly lahat ng mga electrical room or mga electrical room mismo is nasa ilalim siya so that yung room na yon is for the electrical room only. And parang walang ibang taong makakapasok doon for the sake of safetyness. Okay? Ito yung sinasabi ng NEMA dito na if we are to conduct a electrical ocular inspection rather. Ito yung parang makikita natin sa mga high-rise buildings. Okay. So other components, There are several types of other components that customers may request, such as electrical control devices, maintenance and inspection devices, and uninterruptible power sources. There are many types of electrical control devices, such like switches and relays, that customers may specify or that may be available by manufacturers, including the following: auxiliary switches connected mechanically in the low voltage compartment, switches for normal breaker operation, spare components to facilitate future wiring needs. A 69 switch provides an external manually, manual way to, to trip a breaker. When activated, it goes into a block closed state. This ensures that the circuit breaker can't be closed from a remote location. And last, a local remote switch, which is a manual switch that gives the operator local control in breaker switching. So yun, dito sa components na to, automatic transfer switch yung nasa isip ko kagad. Kasi once na kunwari na may blackout or may mga overcharges, yung ATS mismo is parang blocking the way, or the device na siya yung device itself na parang magti-trigger to uh, flow back the electricity. Optional test switches may be located in the low voltage compartment and wired in with relay circuits and CT circuits. This allows for quick access for testing and can be used during commissioning or troubleshooting. Terminal blocks used for making wiring connections and customer connection points. These can be grounded in the circuit breaker as connection points. Current transformer shorting blocks and used for connection to current transformers. They are either molded, case style, sliding link, or combination. When requiring protective When wiring protective relays, users should consider where to locate them: in the low voltage cabinet or in the remote control house, and specify accordingly. There there may be a cost impact based on space constraints within the main cabinet. Example, an auxiliary cabinet to house the relay. However, installation in the control house often requires running additional signal wiring between the cabinet and the control house. So in this topic, yun nga, yung dinadiscuss ko rin, yung na-mention ko kanina. So in this topic, we are discussing the Nema standards itself. Kung pwede natin siyang sundin, why not? Pero here in Philippines, I think we are practicing the Nema standards because syempre, we are US-based and lahat ng mga recommended by the Nema, we are practicing it, we are using it, and we are using it sa ngayon, yung actual niya. Yun yung standard na pinaprovide dito, which is yung lithium ion and yung circuit breaker control cabinets. Yung nakalagay dito sa title, Purchasing Specification Guidance. So, ibig sabihin, yung Nema, naglalagay siya talaga ng standards for the particular products na we will use and using for us to have a safe and reliable devices. So that ends my part. Salamat po sa lahat ng nakinig. Thank you po.
Good day, guys. My name is Austine, and I'm going to report about Nema Standards Publication ENPI 2021. So, this is the summary of Nema 250 enclosure types. So, what is this standard? So, this standard provides a general information of the definition of Nema enclosure types. It is a guide for comparing specific application of enclosures and provides a comparison between NEMA enclosure types numbers and ANSI/IEC enclosure classification designation. So this document is intended to be used by architects, engineers, installers, inspectors, and other interested parties. So before I start, no, let me discuss to you what is a enclosure. So a enclosure is an electrical enclosure is a cabinet or a box that protects electrical or electronic equipment and prevents electrical shock. Enclosures are usually made from rigid plastics or such metals such as steel, stainless steel, or even aluminum. So enclosures are rated to designate protection against hazardous and non-hazardous and even other specific environmental conditions. So pinoprotektahan ng mga enclosure yung mga dekuryenteng kagamitan sa magkakaibang application ng building, industrial, and utility. So, pwede rin nilang protektahan ng mga kagamitan mula sa electromagnetic at radio frequency interference or interference. So, ang mga enclosure ay kadalasang ginagamit upang protektahan ang mga sumusunod na uri ng mga kagamitan. So, ano-ano ba yung mga pinaprotektahan ng enclosure? So, unang-una dyan yung circuit breakers, contactors, control panels, and switches. Pwede rin yung distribution boards and panel boards, pressurization and purging equipment and systems, and even telephone cabinets. So, ano-ano ba yung mga application ng enclosure? So, pwede siya in building electrical and telecommunications. Pwede rin siya gamitin sa chemical plants. Pwede rin siyang gamitin sa electric vehicles charging equipment, sa manufacturing plants, mining oil, and gas facilities. Or pwede rin siya sa utilities. So, ano ba yung scope ng standard na to? So, the purpose of this document is to provide, letter A, general information on the definition of NEMA enclosure types. Letter B, a guide for comparing specific application of enclosures. And letter C, a comparison between NEMA enclosure type numbers and ANSI/IEC enclosure classification designation. So what is a NEMA rating? So NEMA rating stands for National Electric Manufacturers Association and is an organization developed to form the technical standards for the manufacturing of electrical equipment and medical imaging equipment. So NEMA ratings are standards that are useful in defining the types of environments in which an electrical enclosure can be used, So the NEMA rating system is defined by the National Electrical Manufacturer Association and madalas na nagpapahiwatig ng fixed enclosure's ability para ma-withstand yung certain environmental conditions. So NEMA works to set industry standard for safety, innovation, interoperability, environment, and market enhancement for our industry. So although NEMA organization oversees a variety of responsibilities in the electrical manufacturing industry, they are most closely associated with the term NEMA ratings and the type of enclosure an electrical component is built with. So ano bang pinagkaiba ng NEMA rating sa IP rating? So NEMA ratings and IP ratings both degrees of protection against substances such as water and dust, but use different test methods and parameters to define their enclosure types. So with NEMA using NEMA 250 and IP using IEC standard 60529. So dito papasok yung pagkakapareho ng IP ratings. Pagkakapareho nila ng IP ratings. So IP stand for International Protection pero lagi itong nai-interpret as ingress protection dahil sa rating system na nagde-denote sa level of protection sa pagpasok ng dust and water sa mismong enclosure. So, ang NEMA rating system ay para lang siyang IP rating system kung tutuusin. Kasi it allows us to identify yung enclosure na suitable sa environment kung saan ito pwede ilagay. So, NEMA ratings are used exclusively for enclosures, but yung IP ratings can be used for all kinds of devices. So, ayun yung pinagkaiba ng NEMA rating sa IP rating. Next, yung IP rating, gumagamit siya ng 2 digits. So, halimbawa itong IP66. So, bali yung first number na makikita natin, ini-indicate nito yung level ng dust protection. So, in this case, yung number 6, it means na yung enclosure ay completely protected siya against dust. So, while yung second number, i-indicate nito yung level of water ingress protection. So, yung ingress, sabi ko kanina, ito yung kakaya makapasok. So, halimbawa, yung tubig or dust. So, kakaya makapasok ng tubig or dust sa mismong enclosure. So, yung number 6 dito, yung ibig sabihin, yung enclosure ay protektado against the heavy water. Or masasabi natin na water resistant talaga yung mismong enclosure. So, take note, no, there is no direct conversation between IP ratings and NEMA ratings. However, the level of protection they provide is comparable. So, we can say that the NEMA rating equivalent of IP66 is NEMA 4 or 4X, with the 4X providing an additional level protection against corrosion. Next is NEMA enclosure ratings. So, sinasabi dito na all enclosures are designed to protect users from accident contact with installed electrical components and to protect your equipment from possible theft or tampering. However, in order to be better protect your valuable equipment from all possible threats, you should choose an enclosure that is proven to withstand the environmental conditions of your application. So, sabi dito na ang lahat ng mga enclosure ay dinesign upang protektahan yung mga user mula sa mga hindi sinasadyang pagkakadikit-dikit sa mga naka-install na electrical component at para maprotektahan na rin yung mga kagamitan mula sa posibleng pwedeng masamang mangyari. So, types of Nema enclosure. So, dito, let's look the different levels of Nema ratings. So, Nema ratings for non-hazardous location goes from 1 to 6 and 11 to 13, while yung Nema ratings for hazardous locations go from 7 through 10. Number 1, Nema types for non-hazardous area. So it means that in non-hazardous location, the specific enclosure types, their applications, and their environmental conditions, they are designed to protect against when completely and properly installed. So type 1, enclosures constructed for indoors use to provide a degree of protection to personnel against two hazardous parts and provide a degree of protection of equipment inside enclosure against ingress of solid foreign objects. So, sinasabi dito na it protects the ingress of solid objects from falling dirt. So, type 2. Enclosures constructed for indoor use to provide a degree of protection for personnel against access to hazardous parts. Next is to provide a degree of protection of equipment inside the enclosure against ingress of solid foreign objects, for example, yung falling dirt, and provide a degree of protection from harmful effects on the equipment due to the ingress of water. So, for example, dripping and light splashing. So, yun na, bale, halos pares lang sila ng type 1. Pero yung kinaibahan lang is itong type 2 ay nagpo-provide din siya ng protection against sa pagpasok ng kaunting tubig. So, for example, nga yung sinabi kanina is yung dripping and light splashing. Next is yung type 3 ratings, no? Type 3 Nema ratings. So, yung type 3 Nema ratings, nahati siya sa tatlong protection levels, pero with a corrosive protection option. So, bale, 6 in total. So, type 3 are enclosures constructed for either indoor or outdoor use to provide a degree of protection for personnel against access to hazardous parts. Next is to provide a degree of protection of falling equipment inside the enclosure against ingress of solid foreign objects. For example nito yung falling dirt. Next is to provide a degree of protection from harmful effects on the equipment due to the ingress of water, rain, sleet, and snow, and that will be undamaged by the external formation of ice on the enclosure. Next is type 3 RX, enclosure constructed for either indoor or outdoor use to provide a degree of protection for personnel against access to hazardous parts. Next is to provide a degree of protection of falling equipment inside the enclosure against ingress of solid foreign objects, in falling dirt, provide a degree of protection from harmful effects on the equipment due to ingress of water, rain, sleet, and snow, and that will be undamaged by the external formation of the ice on the enclosure. And it also provides an increased level of protection against corrosion. So yung type 3R and 3RX, so halos magkapares lang sila. So yung type 3R and 3RX na rated enclosures ay engineered for indoor and outdoor use. and it protects against rain, sleet, snow, dirt, and pine-prevent din nito yung formation ng ice sa enclosure. So, ang pinagkaiba lang nila is yung type 3RX ay nag-a-add siya ng protection against corrosion. Next is yung type 3. So, type 3 enclosures constructed for either indoor or outdoor use to provide a degree of protection for personnel against access to hazardous parts. Next is to provide a degree of protection of the equipment inside the enclosure against ingress of solid foreign objects. So, for example, yung falling dirt and wind-blown dust. Next is to provide a degree of protection from harmful effects on the equipment due to the ingress of water. So, for example, rain, sleet, snow, and that will be undamaged by the external formation of ice on the enclosure. Next is yung type 3X. So, type 3X enclosures constructed for either indoor or outdoor use to provide a degree of protection for personnel against access to hazardous parts. Next is to provide a degree of protection of the equipment inside the enclosure against ingress of solid foreign objects. For example, yung falling dirt and wind-blown dust. Next is to provide a degree of protection from harmful effects of the equipment due to the ingress of water, for example, yung rain, sleet, snow, that provides an increased level of protection. So, bali yung type 3 and 3X Nema-rated enclosures ay rain type, sleet type, and dust type, and are made both for indoor and outdoor use. So, yung Nema 3 and 3X designates added protection against dust kung ikukumpara natin sa Nema 3R and 3RX enclosure. So, bali yung pinagkaiba ng type 3 and type 3X ay yung type 3X ay nag-a-add siya ng protection against corrosion. Next type of enclosure is type 3S. So, type 3S enclosures constructed for either indoor or outdoor use provide a degree of protection for personnel against access to hazardous parts. Next is to provide a degree of protection of equipment inside the enclosure against ingress of solid foreign objects. For example, yung falling dirt and wind-blown dust. It also provides a degree of protection from harmful effects of the equipment due to the ingress of water, for example, yung rain, sleet, and snow, and for which external mechanisms remain operable when ice-laden. So, ibig sabihin, yung panlabas na mekanismo ng ay nananatiling gumagana pa rin kahit puro na ito ng yelo sa loob. Next is yung type 3SX. Type 3SX enclosures constructed for either indoor or outdoor use to provide a degree of protection for personnel against access to hazardous parts. Next is provide a degree of protection of the equipment inside the enclosure against ingress of solid foreign objects. For example, yung falling dirt and wind-blown dust. Next is to provide a degree of protection from harmful effects of the equipment due to the ingress of water, for example, yung rain, sleet, and snow, and it also provides an increased level of protection against corrosion and for which the external mechanisms remain operable when ice-laden. So yung type 3S and 3SX rated enclosures benefit from same protection as Nema 3. However, it provides protection when ice forms on the enclosure, and it will remain operable when covered in ice. So, bali pinagkaiba ng 3S and 3SX ay yung 3SX ay nag-a-add siya ng protection against corrosion. Next type is type 4 enclosures. So, type 4 enclosures constructed for either indoor or outdoor use to provide a degree of protection for personnel against access to hazardous parts. Next is to provide a degree of protection of the equipment inside the enclosure against ingress of solid foreign objects, for example, yung falling dirt and wind-blown dust. Next is to provide a degree of protection from harmful effects of the equipment due to the ingress of water, for example, rain, sleet, snow, splashing water, and hose-directed water. So, may hose-directed water na siya. And that will be undamaged by the external formation of the ice on the enclosure. Next type of enclosure is type 4X. So, type 4X enclosures constructed for either indoor or outdoor use to provide a degree of protection for personnel against access to hazardous parts. Next is to provide a degree of protection of the equipment inside the enclosure against ingress of solid foreign objects, for example, falling dirt and wind-blown dust, and to provide a degree of protection from harmful effects on the equipment due to the ingress of water, for example, rain, sleet, snow, splashing water, and hose-directed water. So that provides an increased level of protection against corrosion, and that will be undamaged by the external formation of the ice on the enclosure. So type 4 and type 4X, so type 4 and type 4X NEMA-rated enclosures are intended for indoor or outdoor use. And it also provides same protection as NEMA 3 with additional protection against ingress or hose-directed water. So, if you need to clean off your NEMA 4 enclosure, hindi mo na kailangan mamroblema about water damaging your electrical components sa loob ng enclosure. So, next type is type 5 enclosures. So, type 5 enclosures are constructed for indoor use only to provide a degree of protection for personnel against two hazardous parts. Next is to provide a degree of protection of the equipment inside the enclosures against ingress of solid foreign objects, for example, falling dirt and settling dust, lint, fiber, and flyings, and provide a degree of protection from harmful effects on the equipment due to the ingress of water, so for example, in deep dripping and light splashing. So type 5 NEMA-rated enclosures offer similar level of protection as NEMA 4 enclosure, but it is intended to be used only indoors. So it can handle light splashing, but cannot be submerged for periods of time. So next type is type 6 NEMA enclosures. So it is constructed for either indoor or outdoor use to provide a degree of protection for personnel against access to hazardous parts. Next is to provide a degree of protection of the equipment inside the enclosure against ingress of solid foreign objects, for example, yung falling dirt, and to provide a degree of protection from harmful effects on the equipment due to the ingress of water. So, for example, yung hose-directed water and the entry of water during occasional temporary submersion at a limited depth. So, and that will remain undamaged by the external formation of ice on the enclosure. So, type 6P Nema rated enclosure constructed for either indoor or outdoor use to provide a degree of protection for personnel against access to hazardous parts. Next is to provide a degree of protection of the equipment inside the enclosure against ingress of solid foreign objects, for example, yung falling dirt. Next is to provide a degree of protection from harmful effects on the equipment due to the ingress of water. So, for example, yung hose-directed water and the entry of water during prolonged submersion at a limited depth. So, it also provides an increased level of protection against corrosion, and that will be undamaged by the external formation of the ice on the enclosure. So, type 6 and 6P Nema rated enclosures offer the same protection as Nema 4 enclosure with added protection from temporary water submersion up to a designated depth. So, type 6P enclosure means that the enclosure can be submerged for a prolonged period of time. Next type is the type 11 rather. Type 11 NEMA rated enclosure. So, these enclosures are corrosion resistant and offer protection while submerged in oil. So, they are intended for use indoors only to protect the equipment against dripping of corrosive liquids. So, it also protects the corrosive effects of the fumes and gases by providing immersion protection of the equipment in oil. So, yun, no? Ginagamit na siya sa indoor and it can be submerged in oil and water resistant din siya. Next is the type 12 NEMA enclosure. So, type 12 NEMA enclosures constructed without knockouts for indoor use to provide a degree of protection for personnel against access to hazardous parts. So, it also provides a degree of protection of the equipment inside the enclosure against ingress of solid foreign objects. For example, yung falling dirt and circulating dust, links, fibers, and flying. It also provides a degree of protection from harmful effects on the equipment due to the ingress of water, for example, in dripping and light splashing, and it also provides a degree of protection against light splashing and seepage of oil and non-corrosive coolants. Next is type 12K NEMA enclosure. It is constructed with knockouts for indoor use to provide a degree of protection for personnel against access to hazardous parts. It provides a degree of protection of the equipment inside the enclosure against ingress of solid foreign objects. For example, yung falling dirt and circulating dust, links, fibers, and flying. So it also provides a degree of protection from harmful effects on the equipment due to the ingress of water, for example, in dripping and light splashing, and provide a degree of protection against light splashing and seepage of oil and night non-corrosive coolant. So yung type 12 and 12K rated Nema enclosures are intended for general purpose indoor use only. So the type 12 and 12K Nema enclosures protects against dripping and splashing water and a rust resistant. So a type 12 does not include knockouts, which are partially punch openings that can be removed to accommodate cables, connectors, or even conduits, while whereas a type 12K does. Next is the type 13 NEMA enclosure. It is constructed for indoor use only to provide a degree of protection for personnel against access to hazardous parts. Next is to provide a degree of protection of the equipment inside the enclosure against ingress of solid foreign objects. For example, yung falling dirt and circulating dust, pwede rin yung lint, fibers, and even flying. Next is to provide a degree of protection from harmful effects of the equipment due to the ingress of water, for example, in dripping and light splashing. And it also provides a degree of protection against the spraying, splashing, and seepage of oil and non-corrosive coolant. So finally, yung type 13 NEMA enclosures are for general purpose only, no? Indoor use. They provided the same protection as NEMA 12 enclosures, but with added protection against dripping and or sprayed oils and coolants. So next type of NEMA enclosure is the hazardous area. So kanina yung non-hazardous, ngayon naman yung is types for hazardous area. So in hazardous location, sinasabi yun na when completely and properly installed and maintained, type 7 enclosures are designed to contain an internal explosion without causing an external hazard. So, while yung type 9 enclosures naman ay designed to prevent the ignition of combustible gas. So, type 7, NEMA-rated enclosure. So, it is a explosion-proof enclosures demonstrating compliance with the requirements of ANSI/UL 1203 for use in hazardous classified location, classified as Class 1, Division 1, Groups A, B, C, or D, and as defined as ANSI/NFPA 70. So type 7 NEMA enclosures are built for hazardous location, so the enclosure is explosion proof and made for indoor use only. So type 8 NEMA enclosures offer the same protection as NEMA 7 enclosure, but type 8 NEMA enclosures can be used indoor or outdoor hazardous location. So type 9 NEMA enclosures are thus ignition proof. So it demonstrates compliance with the requirements of ANSI/UL 1203 for use in hazardous classified location, classified as Class 2, Division 1, Groups E, F, or G, and as defined as ANSI/NFPA 70. So type 9 Nema enclosures are designation proof and intended for indoor use only. Indoor use hazardous location. So next is the type 10 Nema rated enclosure. So it meets the MSHA, no? Sabihin yung the mine, safety, and health administration standards. So, bali, ayun ang lahat ng type ng NEMA rated enclosure. So, next is the specific type ratings. So, dito na-explain yung pinagkaiba-iba. So, ano bang bagay na enclosures sa inyo kung dito natin makikita yan. So, for example, itong type 1 NEM enclosures. So, yung function lang niya, it access for hazardous parts and ingress of solid foreign objects. For example, yung falling dirt. While yung type 2 NEMA rated enclosures, dagdagan naman siya ng ingress of water and tripping and light splashing. Next is ganun din. Doon natin makikita yung pinagkaiba-iba ng mga enclosure. So, in different application, kung saan ba siya pwede gamitin, kung ano ba yung paggagamitan mo. Next is ganun din dito sa NEMA enclosure rate. So, next is the ancillary rating. So, in addition to type designation, the following ancillary condition can be evaluated and marked. So, the ancillary ratings are optional adds-on to the basic type rating. So, next is the PW or yung pressure wash. So, enclosures constructed for exterior cleaning with high pressure power washers and tested in accordance with section 5.15 of ANSI and NEMA 250. So, the PW ancillary rating may be appended only to the following rating. Ito yung 3, 3X, 3S, 3SX, 4, 4X, 6, 6P, 12, 12X, 4, 13, and closure. So, summary, ano ba natutunan natin? So, nakalagay na the National Electrical Manufacturer Association or yung NEMA is an organization that deals with technical standards for the manufacturing of electrical equipment and medical imaging equipment. So, kadalasan, they are known for their rating system known as NEMA rating, which classifies the level of protection an enclosure has against environmental elements. So, they are closely related to IP ratings, pero they allow for the additional environmental elements such as corrosion. So, NEMA is an American standard, whereas yung IP naman is a European standard. So, NEMA ratings are used exclusively for enclosures, but yung IP ratings naman can be used for all kind of device. So, we'll learn na about each type ng NEMA rating and what protection levels they offer. So, unlike sa IP ratings, the higher the number does not necessarily mean greater protection, and it very much depends on what you are protecting against. So, take note na there is no direct correlation between NEMA ratings and IP ratings. So, however, a type 1 NEMA enclosure is similar siya sa IP10. And yung type 6 NEMA rating enclosure naman ay halos pares lang siya sa IP67. Pero lagi natin tatandaan na there are no direct correlation between Nema ratings and IP rate. So, yun, that's all for me. Thank you for listening.
Nema Standards Publication C29.14b 2021. Scope. This standard covers composite guy, straight, type insulators made of a fiberglass reinforced resin matrix core rod. The fiberglass reinforced core rod may be painted or veiled for additional weather protection. So, bale, dito, may kulay at cover siya in order to para sa weatherproof. Straight type insulators with polymer coatings are covered in Nema. So, bali nakasakop sa Nema yung lahat ng insulator polymer dito. Normative references. This standard is intended to be used in conjunction with the latest revision of the following additional standards. First is the general. The text, gestures, and tables supplement each other. Shall be considered part of this standard. Any variation in this dimension, so kung ano man yung pagkakaiba ng sukat nito, no, due to manufacturing tolerance, kailangan nakalagay, naka-indicate. Materials, core. The core is the insulating part of a composite guy insulator. So, bali parang ito yung nakabalot to intended to cover the mechanical load. Consists of mainly glass fibers. So, gawa siya sa mga glass fibers para mapatibay nito yung mechanical load to develop mechanical strength. Paint. If the core rod is painted, the paint shall be epoxy based. So, bali kapag tinted or may kulay ito, kailangan based ng epoxy. Contain inorganic fillers. Filling or yung pinaka-cover niya is metal parts except for cutter keys. Shall be made of a good commercial grade of malleable iron, ductile iron, steel, aluminum, bronze, or brass. Prototype test. Dito, kung paano i-test, di ba? Ang isang product. So, nakalagay dito is same core material, diameter, manufacturing process, the metal fitting material, the metal fitting connection zone design, coupling, pagdudugtong, core metal interface, and the method of attachments to core. Test procedure. It shall be performed in accordance with the section of 5.1.4.2 of ANSI into 9.1. It applied smoothly to the minimum torsion test requirements specified for the diameter. The test evaluation. All three insulators must pass the dye penetration test na nakapaloob sa section ng 8.2 na standard, except that the only 3 samples are required from each insulator. Test specimens and procedure. 3 insulators shall be tested. The insulation length, metal to metal spacing, at least 800 mm in length to be valid for all lengths. So, may distansya ng at least 800 meter to be valid sa lahat ng haba. The end fitting shall be representative of production insulators. So, valid yung pinakang dulo niya, kailangan representative as the insulator. The insulator shall first be subjected to the appropriate routine test defined within the standard. So, dapat nakapaloob siya sa standard. Low frequency dry flashover test. The failure of the dry flashover is equal to 95%. So, ganun kataas siya, rated dry flash, given of the manufacturer's drawing, constitute failure to meet the requirements of this standard. The low frequency wet flashover test naman is equal to exceed 90% of the rated wet flashover, as the given of the manufacturer's drawing constitute failure to meet this standard. The dimensional test. 3 insulators shall be selected at random from the lot interdimension check against the dimensions of the manufacturer's drawing. The galvanizing test, 3 pieces representative of each type of galvanized hardware used with the insulator shall be selected in accordance of the section of 9.6 of ANSI C2 9.11. The retest procedure, if only one insulator nakalagay dito, Kung ang isang insulator ay bahagi ng metal, a new sample equal to twice the quantity originally submitted shall be subjected to retest. So, kailangan pagka twice nagkatupas sa dalawa ang quantity, kailangan subject to is retest. Then the retest shall comprise the test in which failure occurred sa pagkapalya niya is nandun, preceded by those tests considered as having influenced the results of the original test. The retesting shall comprise the test occurred preceded by those tests considered having influenced the results of the original test. If any insulator fails during the retesting, the complete lot is considered as not complying with these standards. So kapag hindi pa rin talaga kamo nakuha yung tamang testing at hindi mo magsasaring test ulit, ibig sabihin hindi na tayo sumunod sa standard na nakabase. Hindi na tayo bumase sa standard na merong binigay. Battery types, lithium-ion batteries continue to evolve. Katagalan mas lalong nag-improve yung lithium batteries na yan. Construction, chemistry, and configuration. It is rechargeable as opposed to lithium batteries and contain lithium ions in a flammable electrolyte. Batteries are arranged in series to increase voltage, parallel to increase capacity. Fire issues, internal manufacturing defects, material defects, constructions, contaminations, physical damage, mga shipping, handling, waste disposal. Sa electrical abuse, syempre overcharging yan na dyan. Tsaka yung mga short circuit, overload. Thermal abuse is exposure to the high temperature. Codes and standards for lithium-ion batteries and energy storage systems. For lithium batteries, energy storage, series of product standards, installation standards. And later, the edition of 2018 International Fire Code Section 1206, it requires the protection of electrical energy storage systems. The NFPA Fire Code, also reference 855 NFPA for energy storage occupancies. Fire solutions. One method of handling fires is lithium batteries to contain the battery and fire to prevent spreading to other cells or materials. It can be a solution for small portable battery power devices. As the size of the battery increases, the methods of containing it become more complicated. So, sinasabi mo kapag battery size daw is dagdagan, mas magiging komplikado ito. For example, when looking at vehicle systems containing adding to the vehicle. Ito naman mo, mas malaking baterya, mas mabigat yung sakyan mo, which might not be the best solution. However, protecting the battery pack from mechanical damage is a compromise. Kaya pagkalagay mo na mga cover sa battery na yan to prevent mechanical damage is compromise. So, kailangan talaga. Gas detection of gassing occurs early in cell battery filter. Some battery cells provides specifically intended to release overpressure. So, ayun, nagpo-provide to para hindi basta overpressure to develop individual cells as a result of failure. Accommodate a degree of gassing patterns in these first, perhaps along a simple or pre-designed endpoint. Providing information of the incident started to assist first responding to an event. So, kailangan pa rin na yan. Saan yung mga insidente na nangyayari? As well as more general information or any hazards that may indicate the entry facilities that are open. Fire detection. As with all fires, a fire event in a lithium cell battery, basically rapid oxidation, cell materials in exothermic chemical process of combustion, light, releasing heat, virus reaction products, it can be gaseous or solid. Para maiwasan to, in order to avoid release firefighting agent, industry good practice to use coincidence of 2 or more fire detection signals initiating release of firefighting agent. A method of manually delaying the automatic release of agent should be considered as well as the method to bypass the coincidence to release the agent immediately and ensure the situation to continue. Issues fire extinguishing systems. Comprises 1 or more containers to extinguish the agent. When it is operated, uh, it discharges the agent into an enclosure through one or more discharge nozzles. Systems may be activated manually or automatically through a connection to an appropriate fire detection system. Condensed aerosol systems. It is used similar control monitor equipment, control system to monitor the equipment as the gaseous fire extinguishing system. The number and position of condensed aero generators should be in accordance with the guidance recommendation of NFPA 2010. Sprinkler systems. Yung buga ng tubig na parang shower. Automatically fire sprinkler system consists of special nozzles held closed by heat sensitive. Pagka parang nakadetect siya ng init or ng apoy, automatic may temperature yun na range. Putok yun, tapos yung babas na yung heat from a fire process on one or more sprinkler to open to discharge water mula ng sprinkler na parang akala mo shower, sabog yung water ng tubig sa paglabas. Aqueous vermiculite dispersion. A chemically exploited vermiculite applied form of a paste. It is mainly given to a group of hydrated laminar aluminum iron magnesium silicates. Raw vermiculite consists of thin, flat flakes containing microscopic layers of water. The chemical of explosion of vermiculite produces microscopic, freely suspended in water, stable aqueous dispersion of vermiculite. Oxygen reduction systems used as a fire prevention method, creating a closely controlled environment with continuously lowered oxygen. It is introduced into the enclosure, produce an oxygen concentration below combustion. Its concentration can be used to prevent or suppress flaming combustion, creating conditions in which fires can freely develop. Define the basic ratings or model covered. It is intended to be covered must be identified. Siyempre, kailangan malathala mo the ratings or models accepted should be clearly documented. Detalyado talaga dapat yan. Many of models will have identical ratings such as the power, the speed, the voltage, and the enclosure, which affects their energy consumption, making it a new basic model. Establish test lab requirements. Once the test procedure is established, so pag natapos na yung test procedure na yan, nagawa na the test lab accuracy, the procedure requirements are defined. The consistency and accuracy of the test are critical for repeatable results and controlling the measurement uncertainties. The motors may have a manufacturing uncertainty of around 10% based on material. Procedure could also be as much as 10%. Even when all labs follow the exact same procedure previously demonstrated in round-robin test. So, round-robin, paikot, ulitin, ganyan. Considerable work has gone into reducing the uncertainty test, verify the improvement. So, para ma-verify yung pagka-improve, so syempre kailangan idaan lahat lagi sa testing na yan and publication standard na pasok sa expected something in 2020. Of course, the global test. Method for efficiency determination defined as the AEDM, the alternate efficiency determination method, stated in the introduction that PRED models for each rating will make quantity of the base models quite large. It is normally not possible to test every basic model in a way that is not excessively burdensome. When testing, verify confirms a sample size pass-fail criteria must be established. According to U.S. federal regulations, a sampling size of 5 to represent a small population must be observed. Defining minimum efficiency performance standards, it could reconsidered if any of the steps are modified in a way that would change the efficiency results. They are not independent and cannot be separated. Registration process available for products design. Yung efficiency to ensure that all motors meet the minimum efficiency level. Some method of documentation needs to be available for review by regulators and custom agents. one procedure actively being pursued today is the establishment of clear documentation product meets or required to meet. In the past, if the requirements were not documented, the border custom agents would not know any. Eh, sinasabi sa mga nakalipas sa panahon kapag daw ang mga requirements ay hindi dokumentado, hindi detalyado, the border customs agents hindi malalaman yung existed, regulation existed and the product would pass into the country unobstructed. So, kumbaga parang unobstructed, hindi maganda yung resulta yung kalalabasan. The US Alternate Efficiency Determination Method is an analytical, certified calculation method to determine energy efficiency. So talagang ito ay certified, kilala talaga para lang ma-determine yung energy efficiency. Since calculation tool varies among manufacturers and manufacturing process variations must be considered. Each AEDM must be qualified through a series of tests. So dapat talaga sa series of tests conducted in either the manufacturers or third-party certified test laboratory. Pasok dito ang mga highest unit volumes for manufacturer, the different power ratings, different frame number series, and the cover range of ratings is to be applied. High ambient temperature test procedure. Unang-una din yung mga receptacles, connectors or outlets, convenience outlets. Each female device is wired as extended and thermocouples attached to the device wiring terminals. The plug is made into the device under test using alternate phases in the case of duplex devices. Male device is wired as intended, kagaya na sa female. Thermocouples are attached to the device wiring. Nakatouch yan. Nakatap na the mating blades of the plug or inlet are to be short-circuited by means of the short visible length of wire, capacity at least equal of that device. Male and female devices may be tested together, so kailangan i-short yan. The devices are mounted on an open frame and placed in an air circulating heating cabinet, shielded from any internal drops. Naka-open frame dapat, hindi yung naka-closed. Kasi, ayun yan, air circulating heating cabinet. Nag-iinit din kasi yun sa loob eh. The device under test is energized. Siyempre, kailangan naka-energize lagi yan. Temperature in heating cabinet is adjusted. Ayan, kailangan may temperature na required. About 75 degrees Celsius, 90 degrees to 105 degrees Celsius. Accelerated aging test. The devices are to be continued by being placed in circulating conditioning temperature for a period of 96 hours. And the conditioning temperature is the sum of the submeter specified high ambient test temperature plus 30 degrees Celsius. It is capable of completely meeting intended grounding and non-grounding types. Not crack or distort such diameter rod can be inserted through the crack, and the application of the dielectric voltage withstand test. Devices are not required to be subjected to the humidity conditioning. Additional requirements, insulating materials used for direct support of live parts. The UL rating for electrical RTI and mechanical strength without impact. Insulating material shall not be lower than the average of the high temperatures measured during the on cycles of the high ambient temperature test. Markings, warnings, instructions. So, kailangan to yung mga tagging o tawagin markings. The submeter specified maximum high ambient temperature rating visible during the installation. So, dapat kailangan na nakikita visible. Manufacturer may incorporate additional markings to identify the product. Lalagyan siya ng tagging marking, pangalan, number, kung ano yung coding dapat. Matting devices, wire cords and mounting system must be evaluated and treated. Specified high ambient temperature plus additional allowance for heat generated due to the current flow. So, nakatingin dapat nung kung ilan yung voltahe ng lagay, ganyan, nakamarking. So,
Hi everyone. Now we're going to tackle my topic, which is wire insulation colors for lighting system. So, wire insulation colors for lighting system. This standard may also be applied to applied to related parts like terminal blocks, wire connectors, and wire terminals for the connection of wires in the field in the field. The branch circuit distribution, cabling, control, connectors, and other general purposes wiring are covered by the standard. Additionally, the standard must only be taken as a visual color reference rather than suitable advice for the color matching. So, by using this standard, the, the color comparison shall be viewed under diffuse, generally white lightning with a high color rendition, light source with limited color rendering such as high pressure sodium, low pressure sodium, and low color rendering versions of the light so sources shall not be used. By using this standard, specification does not attempt to completely specify each color. Compliance is the responsibility of the wire supplier and its customers. Visual references for colors are limited by the ability to reproduce the colors on uncalibrated printers, monitors, and etc. The color comparison shall be viewed under diffuse generally white lightning and high color rendition. Light sources with limited color rendering, such as high pressure sodium or low pressure sodium, will be not used. So, it means na it is recommended that a light box is utilized and which is designed to block any general illumination, and it's to provide with a uniform diffuse white interior and contains a suitable light source such that comparisons to the color targets can be made routinely with the confident. Next, wire insulation colors. Uh, Wire insulation is not this type. Now, why should we follow the correct color code for wiring? It's because product safety standard set these colors in place to ensure that the wiring is correct to prevent shock and damage to equipment. The purpose of marking the conductors within a cable is to define which conductor is ground, neutral, and line for proper connection to supply the equipment. Now, in section 2, wire insulation colors is not to be stripped except in accordance with application and applicable end use standards. Wire insulation shall be colored in a solid permanent color. Where when wire insulation is stripped, the stripe color shall be distinguishable from solid color in compliance with the requirement under UN standards. All wires colors utilized within the lighting system shall be discernible. Specifically, there shall distinct differences between three colors: violet, pink, and red. All colors utilized within the lighting system shall be discernible from neck reserve colors, including white, gray, green, or green with the one more yellow. So, why color coding is important for wires? Importance of color coding code wire is a very important in domestic circuit because it helps It helps to know that which color of wire is current wire and which one is earthing wire, which is mean ground wire. It also helps if there are damage in wiring, then by the color code, it will be repaired. So you easily identify which color that might damage. There are so many wires identification standard, and many of them rely on the color codes. Not all electrical wiring color codes are not the same though, and some even contradict each other. Which standard should be used in your facility? Well, it depends on your location, installation type, voltage, and other factors. When we'll talk about US electrical wiring codes, these systems are common in home and office environments. So they use color black, red, blue, and for their neutral is color white, and for their ground is green or green with yellow stripes. Now for DC power colors, they use the positive for color red and negative is for black, and the ground color is also white or gray. Now in international electrical wiring color codes, they use for wires can vary. In some areas, the color code is specified by a law. So different codes are popular in different areas. So like in European IEC color codes, they use brown color, black, gray, and for their neutral is blue. While in their ground, they're using green with yellow stripe also. In Canadian wire color codes, for AC power, they use red, black, blue, white for their neutral, and ground, it's color green and yellow also. Now, here, here in installation in topic, mm, this color will identify how pigment are they. So, in violet and pink and red. So this is the colors reference for the wire color guide. This is for the violet. It's the pink, and last is the color red. Now, we're going to tunnel na the application guide for isolated ground wiring devices, Canadian version. This is also part of Nema standards publication. Now, section 1, application consideration. This application guide covers wiring devices and accessories intended to help protect sensitive equipment from malfunction due to noise on the equipment ground path. Devices include receptacles, single or duplex, with straight blade or lacking Nema configuration, rated 15 amperes to 60 amperes and 125 volts, to a single duplex with straight blade or colored coded matting plugs, and wall plates to identify isolated ground receptacle. Now, why we should consider this application? Building grounding system can serve as a giant antenna and conductor of electrical noise. Noise or electromagnetic interference is caused by a transient ground currents that produce random electrical signals. An isolated ground conductor is connected to a building grounding system at one point to keep the receptacle rel- relative, relatively free of noise. Resonance, and high impedance at noise frequencies can occur in long runs of isolated ground wiring. Now, where we should consider this application, an isolated ground system is used where it is deemed necessary to minimize electrical interference on the ground on the equipment grounding conductor. Applications are for power circuits supplying sensitive electronic equipment such as point-of-the-sale terminals, accounting machines, word processors, electronic office equipment and computers, and highly sensitive medical and communication equipments. Next is when an isolated ground system should be used whenever the building grounding network is such that transient currents can produce random electrical signals on the sensitive equipment, such as unwanted signals can be generated on the system by switching inductive loads, magnetic coils, chokes, inductors, and by motor-driven appliances and tools. Radio frequency sources can also create unwanted signals that are picked up and carried by the ground conductor. Next is how. The design of isolated ground branch circuits, including the number of receptacles and the size of uh, grounding conductors, must comply with all applicable requirements of the CE code or local codes. In addition, the designer should consider recommendation of manufacturer of utilization equipment, wiring methods, the installation environment such as nearby or associated electrical equipment, and the length of the color conductor runs. Now, uh, characteristics of isolated grounds of wiring devices. Isolated ground devices help limit electrical noise on the equipment grounding circuit by providing two grounding paths for the installation. The device grounding circuit terminal and grounding contacts are isolated from the grounding path of the metal outlet box. Device mounting means device mounting means and metal cover or wall plate thus establishing a separate dedicated equipment grounding path for connection noise sensitive equipment. So this is the principle of the isolated ground receptacle. So in isolated ground receptacle are not grounded to the to building ground at the receptacle location. Grounding of this device requires an isolated ground path established from the receptacle ground terminal to a suitable equipment grounding point upstream from the device. While the conventional receptacles are grounded to a building ground at the receptacle outlet when mounted in the box. A single grounding path is established through the grounded metal outlet box and the building ground system. Now, when we say isolated ground receptacles, this is has special construction and wiring that help eliminate electromagnetic, which we call noise, that can affect sensitive electronic equipment. They are very rarely installed in homes, but sometimes used in a large installation to combat noise interference with audio, video, and computer equipment. So, makikita mo siya sa mga malalaking building na ah, gumagamit ng mga sensitive or malalakas na interference paggagamit ng audio, video, and computer equipment. Isa na dito ang mga telecommunication buildings and also mga broadcasting network. Now, what is an isolated ground is used for? The isolated ground is a type of equipment ground that reduce the interference by electronics and instrumentation from a radio frequency by connecting that equipment directly to the grounding terminal of the service equipment without ever making contact with another metal component. Next is marking and identification. Isolated ground receptacles are identified by an orange triangle on the face as a set of work by nationally recognized standard. Although CSA does not require the face of isolated ground and receptacles to be a specific color, most manufacturers confirm with the established industry standard orange face. The installer must be able to correctly identify receptacles designed for use in sensitive electronic equipment. Install them correctly. So, ma-identify natin ang isang ground receptacles by the color of orange triangle na makikita sa kanya, which is ito. Next is CSA standard requires that isolated ground receptacle be marked with an orange colored triangle where visible after the device and its cover plate is installed. If the receptacle face is orange colored, the triangle shall be outlined in contrasting color. Cushion mounting means not grounded. Grounding wire connection is required or an equally def- definitive terminology following the word caution. Now, the federal specification requirements. It recognizes a duplex hospital grade receptacle with isolated ground. This device is rated 15 amperes and 125 volt and 50 to 60 hertz. 2-pole 3 wire. The face of the device is required to be orange. And the word isolated ground may be shown in addition federal specification. Isolated ground receptacles must provide an isolated ground path when should used with metal covers or wall plate. Now this is the types. In addition to the basic type isolated ground receptacles, hospital grade receptacles are available with isolated ground. A green dot on the face of the device indicates compliance with the hospital grade test requirements. Transient voltage surge suppression receptacles, also known as a surge protection receptacles, are available with the isolated ground. So kung makikita nyo dito is may color green siya sa harap ng ano, yan yung nag indicate na ginagamit siya sa hospital grade or ito yung requirement sa hospital. While the orange one is for uh, isolated ground receptacles, ma-identify mo sa makikita. Now, what color is an isolated ground receptacle? Isolated ground receptacles are required to be identified by an orange triangle located on the receptacle. Now, where does the isolated ground terminate? Should be terminate on the same ground bar as the equipment ground bar in your situation, since this is the source of your separately derived system. Next, the accessories. A variety of accessories are available to aid the identification of isolated ground outlets and sensitive electronic equipment intended to be plugged into those outlets. These accessories are standard devices that have been marked or color coded for identification purposes to assist users. They not provide an isolated ground function. Orange color coded plugs installed on a cord connected sensitive equipment such as computer, point of the scale terminals, electronic office equipment, and medical communication equipment remind the user that the equipment should be plugged into an isolated ground receptacle with an orange face or orange triangle symbol, metal or plastic wall plates with the word isolated ground on the face further provide ease of identification isolated ground outlets. Now itong mga devices na to is kailangan nakalabel siya or kailangan ng color ng plug niya is orange na kailangan din saksak sa mga isolated ground na makikita mo naman as color orange yung wall plate and meron nakasulat na isolated ground. There are also differences. With the standard 3-slot grounded receptacle, the ground slots for both halves of the receptacles are electrically connected to a receptacle ground screw. The circuit wiring has ground wire that connects to the ground screw to complete the ground safety connection for receptacle. If the circuit feeding the receptacle includes metal raceway conduit and electrical boxes, the receptacle also can be grounded to its box and conduit via two metal yokes or mounting ears that connect it to the box. Now, can two circuits can share one ground? The code requires each branch to circuit have an equipment ground. They can be shared when they are the same raceway. All if all of 20 ampere circuit are in a one race way, then you just need one ground. So, pwede siyang magsama if same silang 20 amperes. Now, we're going to tackle na tackle this Canadian Electrical Code Part 1 requirements. In general, two areas of C Code Part 1 are essential to understanding the application of isolated ground devices. The first area contains requirements for grounding and bonding. The other area is specific exception that permits isolated ground and devices. This is basic grounding and bonding requirements. The basic C code, Canadian Electrical Code, requirements for the grounding and bonding are found in Section 10. Specific ground requirements for healthcare facilities are found in Section 4. For several the reciprocal in basic care areas, receptacles shall not be of the isolated ground type. The scope of the objective of Section 10 of the CE code are as follows. So this section applies a grounding, one solidly one solidly grounded system, two impedance grounded system, and three grounded systems. And for B is bonding and C is equip potential bonding. Now, overall objective and grounding and bonding is to minimize the likelihood of severity of electrical shock by establishing equip potentially between exposed non-current carrying conductive surface and nearby surfaces of the earth and to prevent damage property during a fault. The object the objective of solidly grounding an electrical system and bonding its associated equipment to establish a low impedance connection between the ground conductor and the non-current carrying conductive parts of the system to stabilize the system voltage. Next is the objective of grounding an electrical system to an impedance is to limit the magnitude of ground fault currents, minimize the damage equipment resulting from a single ground fault, and stabilize system voltage. The next is objective of the unground system is to limit the magnitude of ground fault currents resulting from a single ground fault and minimize the damage to equipment on the occurrence of a single ground fault. Next is the objective of bonding is to interconnect the carrying conductive parts of electrical equipment and the system grounded point where one exists which sufficient low impedance to facilitate the operation of protective devices and establish a potential and the objective of equipotential bonding is established equipotentially. Now, for isolated ground devices, code section dealing with isolated ground devices are notwithstanding rules or exceptions to the general rules concerning the ground system. They should not alter either the objective of philosophy of CE code. Rather, specific provision is made for their installation consistent with the basic requirements. The CE code provisions in section 10 allows for isolated ground devices where such a device is needed to reduce electrical noise. Next is basic requirements for safety must be still maintained, including bonding to ground exposed metal parts boxes and wiring systems in boxes. The receptacle, mounting system, and wall plate are bound to the ground and normal means. Special precautions must be taken for application in patient care areas, health care facilities as indicated in section 24. This is the isolation ground installation. As you can see, this is the outlet box with the isolated ground receptacle, color orange, and this is the ground connector, ground conductor. And this other line is for circuit conductors, and this makapal na line na to is the raceway or cable. Now, this is the both insulated or isolated ground conductor permit to terminate either sub-panel, pass through either both. So, dito dumadaan. Now, this is the separately derived source, which is the ground. Must terminate at the service or separately derived source, not terminate at a sub panel. Now, we're going to tackle this one. Wiring methods, metallic raceway system. This is the indication of isolated ground. An insulated jumper must be installed and connected to the grounding terminal if the isolated ground receptacle metal outlet boxes are used in metallically closed conduit system branch circuits. If a bonding conductor for connection to the building ground is required by Canadian Electrical Code Section 10, it must be bonded to each box. Care should be taken to ensure that any uninsulated ground conductor in box does not make contact with the isolated ground terminal. Ito kailangan magkaiwalay. Next is non-metallic raceway system. Non-metallic system are required to have equipment bonding conductor to the bond all metallic parts of equipment supplied by the circuit and ground terminal receptacles on the circuits. For isolated ground receptacles, a separate insulated bond conductor must be run. The bonding conductors must be connected in the same way as described in the metallic raceway system, and to preserve isolation of the isolated ground circuit must not be interconnected. The isolated ground bonding conductor is insulated to prevent the contact with grounded metal objects other than the intended receptacle grounded terminal. Care may be required to maintain this insulation to a sub-panel. Now, if you're asking what is the non-metallic raceway system, ito yung mga nakikita mo sa surface ng mga structures or building. Ito yung merong coupling connectors and boxes and fittings for the installation of electrical conductors. na nakapwesto sa taas ng building na nakikita niyo yung mga tube. Now, cable conduit is a subtype of raceway, perhaps the most popular one, but raceway is more general term. Next is flexible metallic conduit, armored cable, and metal-clad cable system. These wiring methods follows the same rule of metallic racer system. When flexible metallic conduit is used in an isolated ground system, an isolated grounding conductor must be installed and identified as isolated conductor. An armored cable AC has a built-in equipment bonding means which bonds to the outlet box via appropriate box connector. When these cables are used as an isolated ground system, an isolated conductor within the cable must be used in the isolated ground bonding conductor. Redefinition of isolated bonding conductors, which rather than number 2 AWG, which when required is accomplished accordance to C code rule. So for the flexible metallic conduit carbon cable, ang itsura niya is flexible siya na metallic na naka-covered o what we should call as metal jacket that serves conduit to provide grounding. Now, non-metallic cable system is isolated ground can only be obtained in system using non-metallic cable if the cable contain two isolated bonding conductors. And in addition pala sa non-metal flexible metallic, the difference between this flexible cable versus and armored cable is armored cable electrical cable has an extra layer of armor compared on the ordinary flexible cable. There are steel tape armor, thin steel wire armor, and thick steel wire armor. Armored cables are more suitable direct bural than ordinary cables with a stronger mechanical resistance. So mas matibay siya. Next is retrofit. Retrofit is outlet boxes must be bonded to the ground. A separate isolated ground bonding conductor must be installed in a manner suitable for the wiring method used. Never use an isolated ground receptacle to replace a conventional receptacle. Is an ungrounded system. So, hindi siya pwedeng maging kapalit as a conventional receptacle. Ang isolated ground receptacle is for grounding receptacle. Next is separately derived system. There are no requirements in CE code section 10 in conflict with the isolated ground principle. The isolated ground bonding conductor must terminate on the load side of the separately derived system rather than being carried back to the service. Hospitals, it should be noted that isolated ground circuit have no relationship to isolated ground system as described in Canadian Electrical Code Section 24. Now, next is for section 6, maintenance, replacement system, and extension troubleshooting. Now, for maintenance and replacement, as with all electrical wiring devices, is effective maintenance for isolated ground receptacle begin with uh, careful selection, proper installation. Next is guidance for choosing the most suitable unit for specific installation can usually be found in the literature available in manufacturers' isolated ground devices. It, it is vital for the safe performance of the device that is installed according to the instructions of the manufacturer in its intended manner, including circuit rating and polarity of the circuit conductor. For assurance that the entire isolated ground system is safe and suitable for use. Routine maintenance procedures should be applied as well as power supply cords and extension cords that are connected to the isolated ground receptacle. Cords, plugs, and connectors should be free of damage. System extension. Extension of isolated ground circuits are accomplished in the same manner as for conventional circuits. Downstream outlets may be hardwired onto the system, either concealed or in a surface raceway. Downstream outlets may be hardwired into the system, either considered surface raceway. So long the extension wiring confirms that isolated ground wiring principles, portable cord extension from the isolated ground outlet should be made with care not to defeat the bonding isolation supply circuit. For example, using an isolated ground outlet or extension to a cooler or humidifier might introduce the electrical noise into the entire circuit. Now, next is extension of isolated ground circuits are accomplished in the same manner as for conventional circuits. Downstream outlets may be hardwired onto the system, either concealed or in surface raceways. As long as the extension wiring conforms to the isolated ground wiring principles, the portable cord extension isolated ground should be made not to defeat. Okay. Troubleshooting an isolated ground circuit consists of reviewing installation practices for the wiring method used, the verifying that they have been followed, plus carrying out the true maintenance procedure to assure that all components of the grounding system are functional and safe. It is beyond the scope of this guide to consider the analysis of noise currents of the ground system of power supply or effects of the noise sensitive electronic equipment. So next is Nema steel conduit and electrical metallic tubing section white paper. Steel conduit materials and coating. So what are the conduit and tubing? Rigid metal conduit or RMC, intermediate metal conduit or IMC, and electrical metallic tubing or EMT are used in an electrical wiring system in the United States and internationally. Conduit and tubing are raceways of circular cross-section designed for the physical protection of and routing of electrical conductors and cables. They are also used an equipment grounding conductor when installed using the isolated coupling and or appropriate fittings. Grounding is necessary to prevent fires or shock hazards that from ungrounded equipment due to electrical faults. Conduit tubing are principally made from the carbon steel hollow tube with a zinc exterior coating. It's either organic interior coating designed for corrosion protection. Zinc provides superior corrosion protection for base steel tube since it acts in a sacrificial manner with oxygen attacking the zinc rather than the steel. The safety of this wiring system has a long history and is covered by the National Electrical Code. So, the main purpose of conduit or tubing electrical installation is which electrical wires are housed for variety buildings and structural application. These conduits or tubings protects the wire as well as any individual who may come into a close proximity to the wires. So why is zinc used? Because zinc used as a primary coating for corrosion protection on many steel products. Restricting the use of zinc to protect steel would be counterproductive to the environment. Zinc protects steel, one of the most recyclable materials, in application where might not otherwise be acceptable. The sacrificial galvanic nature of zinc protects small discontinuities in the zinc coating. So, what happens to the zinc under normal use? Zinc provides superior corrosion protection for the base steel tubings since it acts in a sacrificial manner to the presence of the oxygen. Without zinc passivation, the zinc will corrode uninhibited and it will be consumed in a non-galvanic protection mode. With the zinc eventually consumed, the bare steel becomes exposed. The behavior of the zinc coating during atmospheric exposure has been examined in tests through the world. Lead content of the zinc. Now, lead is a naturally occurring impurity in the refining of zinc. A solubility of lead in zinc is approximately 1.6% at 450 Celsius. Now, a specification for zinc covers the purity of zinc bars used in galvanizing industry and hence to those by the steel conduit industry. It allows the various impurities, some of which are naturally occurring. The ASTM acceptable levels of lead for the different grades of zinc. Prime Western zinc is 1.4% maximum lead. High grade is 0.03% maximum lead. And special high grade is 0.003% maximum lead. ASTM is an international recognized standard development organization expert from the globe gathered at regular intervals to discuss updates and revisions to existing standards and develop new standards covering nearly all facets of the world. Mix is why our hexavalent and trivalent chromium is used. Trivalent chromium kasi ay lower toxicity, mas lower yung toxicity niya. That means is regulated less stringently, reducing hazardous waste and other compliance costs. While the hexavalent chrome plating is still cornerstone of the surface finishing industry because of their relatively low cost and ability in the commodity. So, mas mura. Now, chromate conversion solution provide the zinc galvanized corrosion protection against white rusting that occurs on unprotected zinc surfaces, while the conversion coating bearing hexavalent or trivalent chromium are used for conduits and tubing because they are beneficial film properties such as chromate films are inorganic and will not flame or catch a fire. So hindi siya flammable. The inorganic features makes for long shelf life as a bacteria or ultraviolet rays have no effect as with organic films. So mas mahaba ang niya, life like bacteria. Uh, the chromate film has excellent corrosion protection and the film is self-healing. Scratches or gogs in the chromate film will reseal themselves upon contacting with the water or humidity. So, ang kagandahan sa paggamit ng chromate is maganda rin siya for corrosion protection, hindi siya mangangalawang agad-agad, and uh, it will reseal or it will heal itself pag uh, nakapag-contact siya with basa or humidity. The films will bend and flex with the conduit without peeling or degrading and continue protecting afterward. So ah, kahit mag tupi-tupi man yan or anything na maging flex or mabend, it still protect the from corrosion. Next is the chromate film is electrically conductive and has a low resistance. This permits easy to reliable grounding or electrical continuity in the circuit in the conduit or tubing. So, ang chromate is also pwede siya mag-conduct ng electricity, which is mababa ang kanyang resistance. Resist chromate films are pre-treat pre-treatment for paints and may be easily paint for color identification with assurance of good adhesion for long service. Now, additional process benefits are ease to application handling. And last is how much hexavalent or trivalent chromium is used. The self-healing nature of chromate conversion coating is as a result of trapped hexavalent chromium in the water insoluble. Trivalent water insoluble trivalent chromate film. Application during the hot dip galvanizing process is typically accomplished by using a dilute chromate solution as a quench medium when existing zinc bath at 850 Fahrenheit. Most US manufacturer protects the exterior conduit tubing with equivalent chrome which has a low toxicity. What are the alternatives? Much research has been carried out to develop alternatives to using a chromate solution conversion coating. To date, no direct substitute has been identified that has equal benefits in the protection of white rust formation. So until now, uh, wala pang direktang nakikita na same benefit ng protection sa white rust formation ang kapalit ng chromium. That's all. Thank you for listening.